Putin faces possible war crimes charges, which could derail peace talks in Ukraine. There is a greater chance that the man whose country invaded Ukraine will face justice if an international arrest warrant is issued for President Vladimir Putin, but it also makes peace talks more difficult. An arrest warrant for the Russian leader was issued by the International Criminal Court on March 17, highlighting the tension between the pursuit of justice and the maintenance of peace. While it may seem impossible to imagine Putin sitting in a Hague courtroom, international courts have brought justice to other world leaders who were accused of war crimes, including the unlawful deportation and unlawful transfer of children from occupied areas of Ukraine to Russia. After his fall from power in Serbia, the man who was largely responsible for the Balkan Wars of the 1990s, Slobodan Milosevic, stood trial in The Hague for war crimes, including genocide. Before a verdict could be reached, he passed away in prison in 2006. One of the countries that has criticized the ICC's action is Serbia, which wants to join the European Union but has kept close ties to Russia. Serbia's populist president, Aleksandar Vučić, has said that the warrants will have bad political consequences and cause a great reluctance to talk about peace and about truce in Ukraine. Others believe that international action should focus primarily on bringing about consequences for Putin and anyone else found guilty of war crimes. On the anniversary of the liberation of Bucha, Ukraine, a town that witnessed some of the worst atrocities of the war, European Union leader Ursula von der Leyen said, "There will be no escape for the perpetrator and his henchmen." Government Chief of Staff George Gulyas said Hungarian authorities would not arrest Putin if he were to enter the country, and Hungary did not sign a resolution in support of the ICC warrant for Putin along with the other 26 EU members. "Not the most fortunate," he said of the warrants, because they lead toward escalation and not toward peace. The arrest warrant for Putin might undermine efforts to reach a peace deal in Ukraine, Daniel Krčmář, an associate professor of political science at Northwestern University, said in an email to the Associated Press. Putin appears to have a firm grip on power, and some analysts suspect the warrant hanging over him could provide incentive to prolong the fighting. The United Nations Security Council could request that the International Criminal Court pause its investigation into the situation in Ukraine for 1 year, as is permitted by Article 16 of the Rome Statute that established the court. But that's not likely, according to Krčmář, whose book, The Justice Dilemma, explores the conflicting goals of seeking retribution and working toward peaceful resolutions of violence. He continued, Ukraine is also unlikely to support such a move, indicating that the Western democracies would face public opinion costs if they made the morally questionable decision to trade justice for peace in such an explicit fashion. Moscow does not recognize the ICC and considers its decisions to be legally void, according to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. Meanwhile, Dmitry Medvedev, deputy head of Russia's Security Council, which is chaired by Putin, suggested the ICC headquarters on the Dutch coastline could become a target for a Russian missile strike. According to Carnegie Endowment analyst Alexander Bonov's commentary, Putin's arrest warrant is an invitation to the Russian elite to abandon Putin, which could weaken his support among Russians. Human Rights Watch's Associate International Justice Director Balkis Jara said in a statement, "The ICC warrant for Putin reflects an evolving and multifaceted justice effort that is needed elsewhere in the world. Similar justice initiatives are needed elsewhere to ensure that the victims of international crimes are brought to justice." To stay abreast of apps reporting on the conflict in Ukraine, visit https://apnews.com/hub/Russia-Ukraine. No reproduction, transmission, publication, or other use is permitted without the express written consent of the Associated Press.